After our parents died, my older sister took over the family business and treated me like a servant. At the gala 8 years later, she mocked me in front of everyone. I handed her a sealed envelope and vanished. 10 minutes later, she called, panicked. I laughed, because inside the envelope was everything she spent her life trying to hide. After a tragic road accident, I lost both of my parents at the age of 19. It was one of those sharp, clean breaks life sometimes hands you, the kind where everything changes in a moment and nothing that follows feels real. One minute, I was a college freshman navigating finals and roommate drama. The next, I was sitting in a cold hospital hallway with a social worker gently telling me I was the legal responsibility of my older sister, Brielle. She was 27 then. Blonde, brilliant, always perfectly dressed, even in grief. I still remember how she walked into the hospital in all black, not a tear on her face, and signed papers like she was closing a business deal. I thought maybe she was in shock. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But it wasn't shock. That was just Brielle, polished, emotionless, already preparing to turn our parents' deaths into a branding opportunity. We were left with a thriving family business, Luxera, a high-end skincare empire based in Scottsdale, Arizona. Our parents had built it from nothing, and in their absence, Brielle stepped in as CEO without hesitation. I wasn't surprised. She'd always been the golden child. Smart, strategic, ruthless when she needed to be. But what did surprise me was how quickly she stopped treating me like a sister and started treating me like an employee. Or worse, like a liability. I stayed in school for a while after the accident, but everything felt hollow. Brielle insisted I transfer back home, to be closer to family, though I knew it was about control. I refused. That's when the tension really started. I pushed back, and she pushed harder. "You could have a real future here, Cassidy," she said one evening during one of her rare check-in calls. "You're smart enough to do something with yourself if you just learned to focus." Focus, in Brielle speak, meant fall in line. She wanted me to wear beige suits, smile politely at donor luncheons, and post polished family photos for press releases. But I had my own ideas. I was studying tech law. Cybersecurity fascinated me. I wanted to make a difference in a world bigger than anti-aging serums and influencer campaigns. At 23, I moved to San Francisco with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and no safety net. I slept on a friend's couch for 3 months, working night shifts at a diner while interviewing at law firms by day. Brielle told relatives I was taking time off to heal, as if I were too emotionally fragile to function. But I wasn't broken. I was just done playing along. I built my career on my own terms. 4 years later, I became an associate at a top cybersecurity firm. By 30, I was handling major cases, advising on national privacy laws, and making a name for myself in the tech legal world. I'd never once used the Lawson name to open a door. Still, I kept hoping things with Brielle might change. That maybe, once she saw I could succeed without her, she'd finally respect me. When I got promoted to partner, it felt like the moment. $400,000 a year, my own office, my own team. I thought, this is it. She'll finally see me. To celebrate and extend a kind of olive branch, I bought her something she'd always raved about, a custom Tesla Model X Plaid, decked out in matte black with cream leather interiors. It cost me nearly $130,000, but I didn't care. I wanted it to mean something. I had it delivered to her office, along with a handwritten note. To the sister who taught me how to go after what I want. Congratulations on holding it all together. She called that night, her tone clipped. That was unexpected. Is that a good thing? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. It's extravagant, she said. But thank you, Cassidy. It'll look good pulling up to events. I hung up feeling uneasy, but I brushed it off. Maybe that was just her version of gratitude. Not everyone says thank you the way you expect. 2 weeks later, we had the Lawson Foundation Gala, our family's biggest event of the year. I'd flown in from San Francisco, brought a designer gown, and even agreed to speak on a tech panel Brielle had added to this year's theme. I wanted to show up as the new version of myself, accomplished, independent, successful. When I arrived at the venue, I saw the Tesla parked right at the front entrance, roped off with a sign that read, Luxora's commitment to innovation and sustainability. No mention of me. Not even a quiet nod in the program or a thank you. I stood there in heels that were already pinching my feet, staring at the car I'd gifted her, now repackaged as a corporate stunt. I found Liam inside. He was 28, charming, and impossible to read. He'd always been good at navigating Brielle's moods, never pushing too hard, never stepping too far out of line. He greeted me with a quick hug and a grin. "Sis, you look sharp," he said. "You killin' it at that law firm, or what?" "Trying," I said. "Did Brielle say anything about the car?" He shrugged. "She loves it. You know how she is. She thinks in optics." "I gave it to her personally," I said. "It wasn't meant to be some brand asset." Liam hesitated, then said, "Maybe just let this one slide. It's not worth picking a fight." That was Liam, always trying to keep the peace, even when it meant standing by and watching me get erased. The evening was filled with small slights. Brielle never introduced me to any key donors. When I got up to speak on my panel, she cut my mic 5 minutes early to stay on schedule. But the worst moment came during the final toast. Standing under a chandelier that probably cost more than my apartment, Brielle raised her champagne glass. "Some people think titles make them powerful," she said, her voice crisp and calculated. "But true power isn't about promotions. It's about influence. It's about creating something lasting. A legacy." She looked directly at me. The smile on my face didn't flicker, but my heart was hammering in my chest. I nodded, as if applauding, but inside, I felt something shift. That night, I went back to my hotel room and opened the drawer where I'd hidden a sealed white envelope. 3 months earlier, I'd taken a genetic test just to learn more about my ancestry. The results didn't match either of my supposed parents. At first, I assumed it was an error. Then I ran a second test, secretly using a sample from Dad's old razor. Same result. I wasn't biologically related to Brielle, or Liam, or anyone in the Lawson family. I'd kept the truth to myself. But sitting there after that gala, after being erased one final time, I knew the moment was coming. I'd been betrayed. Not just by Brielle's cruelty, but by Liam's silence. I'd overheard him the night before the gala, telling Brielle I had something planned for the event. He sold me out, probably hoping to stay on her good side. I ran my thumb across the edge of the envelope, feeling the weight of everything inside it. They thought they knew who I was. They had no idea. And soon, neither would anyone else. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying Brielle's toast over and over in my head, her voice, her smug expression, the way she weaponized every word to remind me where I stood in her world. Or more accurately, where I didn't. I'd spent most of my life trying to decode her. Every look, every silence, every sideways compliment. I used to wonder if there was something wrong with me, something broken that made her treat me like an outsider. But sitting alone in that hotel room, the envelope heavy in my hands, I realized something that shook me to my core. It wasn't me. It was never me. The DNA results inside that envelope confirmed it. I wasn't her sister. Not by blood. I'd suspected it for a while. Something had always felt off. I didn't look like either of my parents. I didn't share any of the family's quirks or features. I'd always been treated like a guest in my own house. Not abused, no, Brielle was far too image-conscious for that. But ignored, undermined, handled. I didn't open the envelope at the gala, even though the urge had been almost unbearable. I kept telling myself there would be a better moment, a private one. But after the way she dismissed my gift, my job, and my very existence with that speech, I stopped waiting for better moments. I started preparing for a final one. The next morning, I met Liam for coffee. I didn't mention what I knew. Not yet. I just wanted to look him in the eye and see if he'd admit to anything. "You good?" he asked, taking a loud sip from his iced latte. "You kind of ghosted last night after the gala." "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." He nodded. "Brielle was in rare form, huh? You know how she gets." "I know," I replied. "Funny thing, though, I overheard you talking to her the night before." in the hallway outside the green room. His smile froze. What? I heard you tell her I had something planned, that I might make a scene. Why would you say that, Liam? He leaned back in his chair, tapping the side of his cup. Cass, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I don't know, I panicked. Brielle was getting suspicious. I figured if I warned her, maybe she wouldn't explode on you publicly. She did exactly that, I said flatly. I thought I was helping. You weren't. I cut in. You made your choice. He looked down. You always want to be the hero in every story, Cass. But maybe this time you're not. That stung more than I expected. But I didn't react. I'd spent years managing my emotions so Brielle wouldn't twist them against me. I wasn't about to unravel now. I flew back to San Francisco the same afternoon. The Tesla? I left it there. Let her keep it. That wasn't the revenge I had in mind. Over the next 2 weeks, I hired a lawyer. Not to sue for the car. I had no interest in material things. But to prepare a potential emotional distress case, should I choose to go public. We gathered years' worth of messages, emails, family statements. It wasn't hard to build a pattern of targeted emotional harm. But I didn't rush. I waited. What I really wanted was to look Brielle in the face one more time before the truth came out. To make sure she understood that she hadn't broken me, she'd only sharpened me. She called me the week after the gala. I heard you were talking to attorneys, she said without even saying hello. I am, I said. Anything you want to admit now, before it becomes part of a deposition? You're being dramatic, Cassidy. You gave me a gift. That doesn't entitle you to anything more than basic gratitude. It entitles me to the truth. There was a pause. What truth? She asked carefully. You know what I'm talking about. Another pause. Longer this time. You really don't want to go down this road, she said finally. Trust me. That was when I knew she knew. Maybe not the test specifically, but something. Maybe she'd known for years. I hung up. The next day, I booked my flight back to Scottsdale. I had no plan, only instinct. The Lawson Foundation's spring gala was 2 weeks away. A smaller event than the winter one, but still full of donors and media. I RSVP'd, and Brielle, clearly cornered, had no choice but to allow it. She sent a carefully worded email saying she hoped we could move forward with positivity. The night of the event, I wore a simple black jumpsuit. No designer labels. No borrowed diamonds. Just clean, quiet confidence. I stepped into the ballroom and saw Liam first, standing near the bar. He saw me and froze. I nodded, but didn't stop to talk. Then I saw Brielle. She was dressed like a CEO stepping off a yacht. I don't even remember what shade of cream her gown was, only that her smile didn't reach her eyes when she saw me. Cassidy, she said, her voice cool. I wasn't sure you'd come. You invited me, I replied. And yet here you are. Still playing outsider, I see. Funny, I said, because tonight, I'm exactly where I belong. That caught her off guard. I moved past her before she could respond. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. Speeches dragged on. Then came her final moment, the keynote. She walked to the stage with the ease of someone used to being adored. She thanked everyone, praised Liam for launching his new app under the Lawson brand, and made some generic statement about family unity. And that was my cue. I stood. Calmly, quietly. And then I said, before we close out the evening, I'd like to share a small surprise of my own. All eyes turned to me. Brielle stiffened. Her smile faltered. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the sealed envelope. I brought this with me 3 months ago, the night of the last gala. But I didn't open it. I wasn't ready. But now I am. The room was dead silent. I took a DNA test. 2, actually. The results were consistent. I'm not a Lawson. Not by blood. A few gasps rippled through the room. I could see Liam's face drain of color. Brielle? She didn't move, but her knuckles were white around the edge of her wine glass. I opened the envelope, pulled out the paper, and read aloud. 0% probability of biological relationship to either presumed parent. This includes Richard Lawson and Amelia Lawson. I looked up. Turns out, I've been a guest in this family my entire life, raised by people who knew the truth, and made sure I never forgot that I didn't belong. I paused. And now, I don't have to pretend anymore. Then I left the envelope on the table, walked out. Not fast, not dramatic, just done. I could hear whispers behind me, could feel the weight of the moment crash down on Brielle like a collapsing building. And I didn't look back. I didn't cry on the way back to my hotel. Not that night, not the next morning either. You'd think after dropping a truth bomb like that in front of a room full of business elites and donors, I'd be shaken, or at least exhausted. But I wasn't. I felt strangely calm, like I'd finally stepped out of a shadow I didn't know I'd been living under. I ignored the dozens of missed calls and texts that flooded my phone after I left the gala. Most were from unknown numbers, a few from Liam, and finally, one from Brielle herself. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I spent the next day walking around downtown Scottsdale, trying to figure out what came next. I didn't regret anything, not the test, not the public reveal, not even the timing. But it hit me that I was now, officially on my own. Whatever fake sense of family I'd been clinging to was gone. The Lawsons would never look at me the same way again. But then again, they never really looked at me at all. Around midday, a text came in from a number I didn't recognize. The message was short. Please. One conversation. You deserve the full truth. Amelia. I stared at the screen for a long minute. Amelia Lawson. The woman I'd called Mom for most of my life. Even if I could count on one hand the number of times she'd truly seen me. I hadn't even considered that she might reach out. But she had. And I couldn't ignore it. We met the next morning at a small cafe on the edge of town. She was already there when I arrived, seated by the window, no makeup, no designer scarf, just a pale cardigan wrapped around her shoulders. She looked older than I remembered, maybe from stress, maybe from the fallout I'd caused. Or maybe just from years of keeping a secret too big to carry alone. Cassidy, she said, her voice soft. Thank you for coming. I sat down but didn't speak. She took a deep breath, then started. You were born in Portland. I was 19 in college. I wasn't married. The man, your biological father, his name was Henry Dunn. He didn't know I was pregnant. My parents were furious. I was sent away. They arranged everything. When you were born, I was told I had two options, give you up entirely or pretend you didn't exist. I blinked, my throat dry. So, why did I end up back with you? She nodded slowly. Your father, Richard, knew. He met me after college. When we married, I told him everything. And he offered to raise you as his own. But not publicly. He insisted we say you were born a year into our marriage. That no one could know. So we moved to Scottsdale. Started over. You were just a baby. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. Tears formed in her eyes. I was going to. I always meant to. But the longer I waited, the more complicated it got. Then Brielle got older, and things changed. She never really accepted you, even as a child. And your father, he grew distant from you in ways I couldn't fix. He punished me for not being his, I said flatly. She nodded again. Yes, I believe he did. We sat in silence for a while. There was nothing else to say, not really. No apology that could undo it. No explanation that would make any of it okay. But the truth helped. At least now I understood why the love I craved from them always felt so far away. I left that cafe with mixed emotions, sadness, sure, but also a kind of relief. I had answers now. Real ones. And I had a name. Henry Dunn. My real father. I didn't waste time. That same week, I hired a private investigator. It wasn't difficult. Henry had a tech firm in Seattle, 2 grown kids, and a modest public profile. I found an email address, and after staring at my screen for hours, I finally sent a message. I didn't say much. Just my name, my birth date, and a request to talk. He replied the next day. His tone was cautious but kind. This is a lot to process. I never knew about you. I'd like to talk when I'm ready. Please give me a few days. I respected that. I'd lived my whole life without him. I could wait a little longer. Back in San Francisco, things picked up quickly. News of my speech had made it to a few local outlets. Some blog picked it up as a viral story about the woman who confronted her billionaire sister with a DNA test. My firm tried to stay neutral, but I could feel the buzz. Most of it supportive, some of it skeptical. But for once, I didn't care. What mattered more to me was what I did next. I returned the Tesla to Brielle's assistant, with no explanation. Then, I had my lawyer draft a formal civil complaint for emotional distress, decades of manipulation, humiliation, and psychological harm. I knew it wouldn't go to trial. Brielle would never let that kind of attention hit her brand. But I wanted her to squirm. I wanted her to know I wasn't scared anymore. I also decided to start something of my own. Something real. Using my bonus, and eventually the money I earned from the car's resale, I launched a nonprofit called Threadcut, a legal resource center for women estranged or disowned by their families. We help with name changes, housing, restraining orders, and emotional abuse cases. My first clients came from stories I read online. I recognized myself in all of them. As I rebuilt my life, something strange happened. I stopped needing to prove anything. I no longer cared whether Brielle respected me or whether Liam regretted his betrayal. They had revealed who they were, and I had finally figured out who I was. Then, one Friday afternoon, I received another message from Henry. Cassidy, I've thought about your email every day. I'd like to meet if you're still open to it. I'll be in San Francisco next week. Coffee. I stared at the screen for a long time, heart racing. Then I typed back just one word. Yes. I met him at a quiet cafe near the marina in San Francisco. It was one of those cool spring mornings where the sky is gray, the breeze is soft, and the air smells faintly of salt. I got there early, too early, and spent 15 minutes wondering if I should leave. I had no idea what I'd say when I saw him. How do you talk to the man who gave you life, but never knew you existed? Then I saw him walk in. Henry Dunn. He looked like me. That was the first thing I noticed. His posture, the sharp lines of his face, the way his eyes flicked around the room like he was mapping everything out before settling in. He spotted me right away. No hesitation. Cassidy, he asked, his voice low and a little uncertain. I nodded. Hi. He sat across from me, folded his hands on the table, and for a few moments, we both just stared. There was no dramatic music, no rush of emotion. Just two strangers trying to figure out what to do, with something neither of us expected. I didn't know, he said first. Your mother never told me. If she had, I would have been there. I believed him. I didn't know why, but I did. Maybe it was the way he said it, no excuses, just truth. The way I always wanted things. She said her parents gave her two choices, I replied. She picked the one that kept me, but not in the way that mattered. He looked down, silent. I don't want anything from you, I said, just to be clear. No money, no father-daughter bonding trips. I just wanted to meet you, to see your face, to know if I came from someone who might have loved me if they had the chance. He looked up then, and there was something sad in his eyes, something soft. I would have, he said. I would have loved you. It wasn't a grand declaration, and I didn't expect one. But it landed. It settled something inside me I didn't even know was still aching. We talked for over 2 hours. He told me about his life, his engineering company, his kids, his long divorce, his regrets. I told him about mine, my law firm, my nonprofit, the woman I had to become to survive the world I was raised in. He listened, really listened. No interruptions, no subtle judgment, just attention. It was new for me, unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. Before we parted ways, he said, if you ever want to talk again, I'm here. You don't owe me anything, but I'd like to know you if you'll let me. I gave him my number and thanked him. That was all. No tears, no long embrace. Just something new beginning quietly, and maybe that was better. After meeting Henry, everything in my life began to feel lighter. Not fixed, not perfect, but clearer. I stopped carrying guilt that wasn't mine. I stopped chasing Brielle's approval like a prize. I finally understood something I should have known years ago. The people who make you feel unworthy are rarely right. They're just louder. Back in San Francisco, Threadcut started gaining traction. We got our first grant, hired a case manager, opened a second office space downtown. Women from all over started sharing their stories with us. Stories of control, manipulation, of being erased by people who should have protected them. I heard myself in every one of them. I knew what they'd lost, but also what they could still gain. One afternoon, I was reviewing intake forms when my assistant walked in and said, "Someone's here asking for you. Says her name is Brielle Lawson." I froze. I hadn't seen or spoken to Brielle since the night of the gala. I'd returned the car, sent back some of the family heirlooms I'd kept out of habit, and ignored every single message that came afterward. She had no place in my life anymore. But I told my assistant to send her in. She walked into the office, wearing muted colors and no makeup. That was the first sign something was different. She looked tired. Or maybe just like someone who'd run out of armor. "Cassidy," she said quietly. "Brielle. I'm not here to fight," she added. "I know I have no right to ask for anything. I wanted to see for myself." "See what?" She glanced around the room, her eyes landing on the Threadcut logo behind my desk.
"What you built," she said.
"What you've become." I didn't say anything. "I've spent so long trying to control everything," she continued. "The business, Liam, even you. And for what? All I did was push everyone away. I thought power meant keeping people beneath me. But you proved me wrong." I still didn't speak. She took a breath. "I won't take up more of your time. I just wanted to say,
I'm sorry.
I was cruel to you. And I knew about the DNA. I knew for years. That was the only thing that made me flinch." "You knew," I said finally. She nodded. "I found out in my early 20s. I overheard Mom and Dad arguing. They thought I was asleep. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to believe it. But as we got older, I started using it, holding it over you, even if you didn't know. So every dig, every silence, that was intentional?" She nodded again. I let that sit between us. I could have screamed. I could have thrown her out. But I didn't. I'd already won, and we both knew it. "I don't forgive you," I said calmly. "But I'm not angry anymore. That's your burden to carry now, not mine." She nodded like she expected it. Then she turned and walked out without another word. And that was the last time I saw Brielle Lawson. Liam never reached out again. I heard through mutual contacts that he moved to Miami to start a tech startup, still clinging to whatever scraps of the Lawson brand he could use. That was fine. He made his choice, and I made mine. As for me, I finally felt at peace. I no longer lived in reaction to what others did to me. I no longer woke up feeling less than. I had my truth, my name, my power. I didn't get the family I wanted, but I created the life I needed. And that, for me, was enough.